This is 10, and you're watching Tenebrisgate. No, I'm not an LMHC degree. Sorry, I'm not an LMHC financial legal advisor. All choices are your own. I'm not a doctor. I'm only, entertainment value technically, and I mean, I can give you an alternative perspective on things, but that's really it. The choice is in your hands. We need you. Bum 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 bum. So previously we talked about crisis of faith, right? Oh God. Oh God. Right? That, and I think I kind of hinted about like the benefits of having a crisis of faith. I talked about how it kind of like highlights the contrast and what you really want. But I think it also too, like when you dive into the emotions and to what's really going on, it really does help you understand yourself so far better, because you can have an honest dialogue with the divine source. After I talked with you about it, I was continuing the dialogue. I was like going like, I remember like thinking to myself, going like, it's just not fair, right? It's not fair that I'm not good at certain things. I wish I was. And then I had another episode about being neurodivergent and going like, why am I like this? Like, why can't I be like everyone else, right? But I thought it was a really amazing, phenomenal dialogue to have with myself and with the divine source, because I felt like they were kind of like really strongly encouraging me to pursue poetry, because I was really good at poetry. In like I was doing poetry at a very young age, like really young. I remember at an early age I would go to social events with other people, and I'd always have a paper, pen, and I would spend whatever free moment I could just to write. I was like really a young kid. And I was lucky and fortunate enough to be encouraged to continue it, because probably back then they're thinking, oh good, she's quiet. She's not up to mischief, right? But like what I used to do to help myself understand myself better is I would think about what I used to do for fun when I was younger. I'd ask myself, what did I like doing? What did I think I was good at when I was younger? Because it would give me a clue on my true north. And as you get older, sometimes your vision and your true north kind of get a little clouded and off center, confused, because these other voices come into play. Because and a thought I had today while driving back home was that if you are raised in a competitive world, in a competitive way, what often can happen is that you feel like you have to meet a high standard of someone else's standards. By the way, it's not your standard, it's someone else's standards. And so you're trying to constantly conform to this, and so it's very toxic, right? Because it's not cooperative, it's not there's no what's the word I'm looking for? It's not, there's no 50-50 involved in it. You just have to shut up and put up and try to work yourself to the bare bones in shifting and twisting yourself into something that you're not, because you have to match someone else's standards. And so, what will happen is that eventually you just forget. You forget who you used to be, what you liked, what you wanted, and so you're trapped in this weird cycle. And this actually is in many ways, or is at least one of the many reasons why sometimes we will actually have a crisis of faith, or we might have a midlife crisis, is because our current reality doesn't match what our original intentions when we came into this planet were. Like, when you were a kid, what were you wanting to be before other people told you what you should be and what you should be doing, right? Because when I was a kid, I wasn't thinking about what I would become. I just thought, like, oh, I want to be a mom, and I want to be a writer. And the things I was writing was poetry and writing about my feelings and my experiences, and spirituality. And I was really into that, like really into it. And then eventually, what happened as time occurred, people were saying, well, you really should go into a good school. Like, a good education is really important. And then you should also get a real job, because the stuff you want to do, you can wait until after you get yourself settled, when you have income coming in. Don't do that now. Like, that's just not smart. And so I put off a great many things just so I could get a real job. Yeah, like what these real jobs that we're told to take on at young age don't actually really pay. And I personally have experienced that the current American system as being a bit of a sham. They just take your money and run with it, as far as I'm concerned, because they tell you there's going to be jobs and there's no jobs, or the jobs are really outrageously underpaid. I mean, I think there's some really good benefits from going into school, but I don't think for financial reasons. Like, you have to go in it and not think about money. And we do not live in that world where you cannot think about money. So I feel like I got tricked. And so if I could go backwards in time, I would definitely focus more heavily on writing and being a spiritual individual, and focusing on my practice and on my faith, instead of listening to what other people think I should be doing. Sorry. And like, the lighting makes my teeth look weird, so it's making me very, speaking of like worried about what other people think, right? And so that's why I think the crisis of faith, or midlife crisis, is actually really relevant and really important. Because if you didn't have an early one in your 20s, or if you didn't have a moment of clarity that allowed you to make a pivot when you're younger, when you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, something has become so unbearable, it's woken you up. And you have no choice to pivot or just do emotional death, or spiritual death. And it's so important when we have these crises of faith to not dismiss them, to not demean yourself, to not ignore them. Because if you try to put it in a box, you're just going to make it worse. There's going to be additional pressure built up that could make the situation very much more difficult to handle. Like, I saw people where they had relationship issues, and because they didn't contend with them and deal with them, and found coping strategies and developed a voice and been more assertive, they end up in a problem where they they actually were really, I worked in inpatient psych hospitals, so I saw all kinds of individuals who had to come in for all kinds of different reasons, because things were left, ignored and not taken seriously. And so I remember having that imprinted on me in my 20s, thinking, oh shoot, this is what happens if you don't take your mental well-being seriously. Oh shoot, this is what happens if you kind of let people run your life. Oh shoot, this is what happens if you kind of force yourself to conform. Oh, this is what happens when you ignore your depression symptoms and you don't use coping skills. Like, I remember kind of like having my eyes open to that. And then so as I got older, I was like, you know what? I'm having this crisis of faith. I'm having these emotions. I need to honor them. I need to rest. But I also too have to ask myself questions, because I saw what happens to people who do not ask themselves questions. I know what happens. I do not want to be like, no offense to them, but I just didn't want to be a casualty of war versus society that tells you to shut up and put up, or don't feel, um, don't dream, or be practical. Like all these, like these gaslighting and brainwashing strategies that had been placed on us. Like I was like, I can't afford that. I have a kid, I have a partner. I have to like force myself to open up and be raw, and also to say, hey, like this is real, this is valid, but we can't stay with it. But while we're here in this, let's kind of like explore, like, what is it that I really want to do for the rest of my life. And so I was really caught off guard that writing a fiction novel thingy majiggy I was like, why? It's not fair, divine source. And like, you're a poet. Like, why are you trying to turn yourself into a box when you're a circle? Like, why are you trying to do that? And like, well, because I'll bring in money. And they're like, but we told you multiple times to focus on the 10% chance. There's context to this, but they're basically saying that there's power in not thinking about the odds. Like, screw the odds, right? And focus on the light involved in the chance of it actually happening. Like, oh my god, this actually may happen. Like, I could become a real life poet, man. And I'm actually currently working, I decided to start up my project again after a year on the back burner. So I'm doing it again. I wrote a couple of different poems in it. I also too did some editing of it. And there was a couple concerns I had in it as I went along with it, because I thought some of it was really good, but I realized that when I'm first finished with the manuscript, I'm gonna really have to fix a couple of things. But I was like, you know what? Still, for an incomplete manuscript, it's not that bad. By the way, if you are interested in pagan poetry, I do have my first book is actually on Amazon. I don't know if it's on Kindle. I don't know. It's an ebook. It was my first attempt at a pagan poetry, and you can find it for my because my writer's name is Morgana Tenebris. So I will put that down below so you my name for it. I think I put the title as something that, it's so bad I don't remember. It's because I didn't take myself seriously enough. And I think that I didn't have the confidence to be a writer. And I was just like, but I did actually put effort into it. I was really proud of myself for publishing it. I was so proud. And not one person bought it because I lacked the confidence in it. I think if I could go backwards in time, I think I would advertise it a little bit more and be less distracted about all kinds of stuff. But there's a lot of writers out there, they're advertising in such an incredible way that it's impressive. And so, like, to get back on track, because this is kind of why it's so relevant to have crises of faith, because it forces you to have this kind of level of clarity where you can get back on track. So if you had a project on the back burner and you distracted yourself with something that you feel like you're going upstream with, which is a Abraham Hicks term, so look up Abraham Hicks for upstream. So when you're putting up like a lot of energy for something, that isn't occurring very easily, and you just keep on trying, nothing happens, right? Going downstream is you are working on something and it occurs at a faster rate. It's so much easier. It just seems to happen like magic almost. And that's, you know, that's useful because then you can, like, if you're looking at the downstream aspects of your life, you can be like, well, you know what, like when I was a kid, that just happened so easily to me. Like, I think about, like, let's say for people who are like really good at soccer, right? They were really good at soccer, but someone told them like, you shouldn't go and become a soccer player. Like, you're gonna get injured, and the odds of you becoming famous are just low. But you're so good at it, right? And you think, well, maybe I should do something practical. Wait a minute. We only have this one life if you're not pagan, right? If you're pagan, we have multiple lives. But that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. I am going to wrap up this episode because I always have a limit. I try not to go more than 20 minutes because I feel like I'll lose you, or I'll ramble too hard and good, and then you'll definitely be lost. But overall, like, we're definitely going to talk about a lot of different topics. I'm playing around with the idea about talking about social contracts, and so, you know, overall, yes, a lot of times I talk about spirituality. You'll sometimes hear me talk about tarot, which I haven't done a lot lately. I'll talk about deities, things like that. But I hate to say, but you might hear some political stuff being thrown out here and there because I do draft audios where I kind of like brainstorm, and I've been kind of caught off guard because social contracts has come up like twice in a draft audio clip, and I was kind of caught off guard by that, and I was like, well, you know what, that's relevant to this world we live in, because what happens if someone doesn't fulfill their end of the bargain? What are our responsibilities to that? So that might be an episode for down the road. So if you're like going like, well, she never talks about anything other than spiritual stuff, just wait. I go through phases and fixations because of my ADHD. So I might talk more about my ADHD. I might talk about more about my spirituality. I might just grab hair out of my mouth in front of you. I might talk about mommy stuff. It's just, I'm kind of like eclectic in everything I talk about, because a lot of what I'm trying to do is not exclude the real life from emotional wellness and spirituality. I mean, you know, I have found that my spirituality actually grows when I think about the real world and its impact on me, because I had this random thought that popped out during a draft clip where if we exclude the real world, we're excluding the divine source. And which that means is that the divine source utilizes our world, our external world, to communicate with us, not just through angel numbers, symbolism of animals and birds and things like that. They will actually communicate through us through all kinds of stuff. Like, have you ever like had an odd conversation with someone and go like, I feel like the divine source was just talking to me in that moment? Or you had a certain life lesson that came through and it was happening in real time, like you're having an emotional response to it. And like, I'll give you an example. Like, when I used to experience Kali a lot in my life, and so things would happen really hard and really fast and scary, and I had shingles at an early age in like 21, and that's really wild, right? And when I reflect about that time period, I was really struggling socially. I was also too kind of like losing my way and desperate to live, and yet not picking the right people in my life. And I had this crazy belief that life was hard. This is a lot of other things about that time period. And sometimes I'll look at my face too, and I'm like, I have a witch's nose. Like I'm sorry to get distracted, but if you look, it's like I'm a witch. I'm a witch. Sorry, I couldn't help it. But that's gonna be in my head for the rest of the night. We have life lessons that are rather difficult, and we cannot exclude them in our spirituality just because we think that the divine source should be kind and thoughtful to us, because they do wish to be that to us. But we're here on this planet for school, man. Like we're on this planet for school. So you cannot exclude the source in whatever they're thinking, feeling, doing, because they're going to talk to you, and they're going to have a lesson plan for you, because they think you're the best. They think you're so smart. They think you can do so much. So don't exclude them from that. And I think I am starting to get to the point where I'm rambling a little bit, and I do apologize about that. But yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna let you go. Marry me, blessed be. And it's like right? Like, do you not see it? Like let me see it. There we go. Yeah, like I look like it's just I can't help it. I'm sorry. Bye guys. Love and light.